There are moments in a believer's journey when heaven speaks louder than circumstances, when the whisper of God becomes stronger than the noise of the world, and when the stirring in your spirit announces that something is about to change. You may not see it with your physical eyes yet, you may not understand it with your natural mind, but deep inside you can sense a shift. It is subtle but undeniable. It is quiet but powerful. It is the signature of God preparing to launch you into a new dimension. A divine shift never begins on the outside. It begins within you. Before God changes your situation, He changes your spirit. Before He shifts your environment, He shifts your discernment. Before He opens new doors, He renews your expectations. When heaven is getting ready to elevate you, it often starts by disrupting your comfort. The places you used to fit no longer feel right. The conversations you used to enjoy no longer satisfy you. The habits you used to carry no longer match your spiritual weight. This inner discontent is not frustration. It's transformation. It is the sign that God is repositioning your heart for a higher assignment. Sometimes God allows the old season to dry up so you will not cling to it. He allows certain relationships to dissolve so they do not distract you from what He is about to reveal. He allows routine to become uncomfortable so that you stop relying on familiarity and start depending on Him again. You may wonder why things changed so suddenly, why the grace for certain activities faded, why you felt pushed out of circles you once longed to belong to. But every divine shift begins with divine separation. God removes what cannot go with you because the next dimension requires a purer atmosphere, a sharper focus, and a lighter load. He does not strip you to weaken you. He strips you to prepare you. A divine shift is a spiritual announcement that your time has come. There is a moment when the heavens declare enough preparation, now manifestation. You might feel like nothing is happening, but in the unseen realm, everything is aligning. God is speaking your name in places you've never been. He is arranging opportunities you never applied for. He is stirring hearts that will one day bless you unexpectedly. He is positioning resources that are going to meet you right where you are. You are not stagnating, you are being set up. The shift comes quietly but moves powerfully. Nothing on the outside hints at what God is orchestrating in the invisible. The disciples were fishing on a normal day when Jesus called them into destiny. David was tending sheep in the wilderness when God shifted him toward the throne. Joseph was in the prison when God shifted him into the palace. A divine shift never announces itself with noise. It announces itself with divine timing. One moment looks ordinary, and the next becomes destiny, defining. That is what God is preparing for you. The divine shift begins when God says, "This is the moment I have chosen." You may have waited for years. You may have prayed until your tears dried. You may have wondered whether your season would ever come. But when God decides to move, He compresses years into days. He accelerates what was delayed. He redeems what was lost. He restores what was broken. He rebuilds what was destroyed. When He shifts you, He does not take you back to where you were. He launches you into something higher than you imagined. His shifts are always upward, always forward, always toward purpose. In a divine shift, God awakens dormant potential within you. Dreams you buried begin to breathe again. Ideas you abandoned begin to rise again. Strength you thought you lost begins to return. You begin to see yourself differently because God is expanding your spiritual lens. He gives you new vision, new hunger, new authority. He shows you glimpses of what is coming, not to tease you, but to train your faith. Vision is God's way of preparing you for elevation. He shows you the next dimension before He takes you there, so you will recognize it when it arrives. There is also a divine restlessness that accompanies the shift. You sense that where you are is no longer where you belong. You sense that what you carry is bigger than the environment you're in. You feel drawn to grow, to stretch, to rise, to step out. This is God calling you out of the shallow waters and into the deep. This is God telling you that there is more purpose, more anointing, more influence, more impact, more responsibility, more territory. Your spirit begins to stretch before your life does, because God launches you internally before he launches you externally. A divine shift often comes right after a season of pressure. Pressure is the womb of promotion. It is the soil in which God plants transformation. Many people misinterpret pressure as punishment, but pressure is preparation. When everything feels tight, God is enlarging you. When everything feels heavy, God is strengthening you. When everything feels uncertain, God is teaching you to trust him. Pressure is not a sign that God has abandoned you. It is a sign that he is molding you. Diamonds are formed under pressure, not comfort. Strength is forged in heat, not ease. Faith is developed in storms, not sunshine. If you have been in a season of intense pressure, it is because God is preparing you for intense elevation. This divine shift is not something you produce. It is something you perceive. Your responsibility is to stay sensitive, stay prayerful, stay expectant. God does not shift people who are spiritually asleep. He shifts those who are watching, listening, and surrendering. When he begins to move, you must move with him. Do not fight the change. Do not fear the unfamiliar. Do not cling to the past. What God is shifting you into is greater than what he is pulling you from. He is preparing to open doors you never knew existed, to place you before people you never thought you'd meet, to entrust you with assignments you never imagined fulfilling. A divine shift means the old season has completed its purpose. It means your preparation has reached maturity. It means heaven has decided it is time for you to step into the next dimension of your calling. You did not endure the battles you endured for nothing. You did not walk through the fire to return to ordinary. You did not survive the valley to remain in the shadows. God preserved you because he is preparing to reveal you. He strengthened you because he is preparing to use you. He refined you because he is preparing to elevate you. A divine shift is God's signal that you are closer to your breakthrough than you realize. There comes a moment in your spiritual journey when heaven declares a verdict over your life, and that verdict overrides every obstacle, every delay, every opposition, and every human opinion. When God decides it is your time to rise, nothing on earth and nothing in hell can interfere with that divine appointment. Elevation from God is not the result of human approval. It is the result of divine intention. And when God intends to lift you, the entire universe responds to his command. There are seasons when it may look like everything is resisting you. People misunderstand you. Opportunities slip away. Progress feels slow. You face setbacks, disappointments, denials, and delays. You try your best, yet things don't seem to move. But none of these moments are signs that God has forgotten you. They are signs that the timing is not yet aligned. Because when God elevates you, he does not do it halfway. He does not create partial opportunities. He does not position you in a place you are not prepared to sustain. What looks like resistance is often divine protection. God will not open a door prematurely, because premature promotion can destroy what divine timing intends to strengthen. When God is ready to elevate you, he will bypass normal systems. He will break natural protocols. He will override structures that were never designed to contain your destiny. You may feel like you don't have the connections, but God does. You may think you lack resources, but heaven is full. You may worry about your background, but God specializes in using people who come from unexpected places. He does not check your resume. He checks your spirit. He does not evaluate your status. He evaluates your obedience. Elevation is not given to the most qualified, it is given to the most surrendered. When God lifts a person, He does it in a way that silences doubt. He elevates you so undeniably that even your critics cannot deny His hand on your life. People who overlooked you will be forced to witness what God has appointed. People who doubted you will have to testify that something supernatural is at work. It is impossible for God to move and for your life to remain the same. His elevation carries a signature that no human can replicate. It is marked by favor that opens doors without explanation. It is marked by opportunities that you did not chase. They chased you. It is marked by breakthroughs that appear impossible until God makes them reality. When God elevates you, He often does it in the face of opposition. He will raise you right in front of those who counted you out, not to embarrass them, but to demonstrate His sovereignty. God does not elevate you in secret. He elevates you before witnesses. He wants the world to see that your life is the result of His grace, not man's approval. You may have enemies, but your enemies do not control your destiny. They can plot, scheme, gossip, criticize, and attempt to hinder you, but their plans collapse when heaven speaks. God does not consult your enemies when deciding your promotion. Their opinions are irrelevant to His purpose. When God elevates you, He removes barriers that once seemed immovable. A mountain that stood in your way for years suddenly collapses. A closed door that seemed sealed suddenly swings open. A situation that felt hopeless suddenly transforms. What you could not do in your strength, God accomplishes in a moment with His power. He is the one who lifts, and when His hand is upon you, every force that tries to push you down becomes powerless. Sometimes, before God elevates you, He allows you to experience resistance so that you will recognize His intervention when it arrives. He lets people underestimate you so that you will not depend on their approval later. He allows doors to close so that you will not mistake human decision for divine promotion. He lets certain opportunities fail so that you will understand that elevation is not earned, it is bestowed. You cannot manipulate it, you cannot force it, you cannot rush it, you can only prepare for it and trust God's timing. When elevation is from God, it comes with peace. It does not produce anxiety or fear. It does not pressure you into striving. It flows naturally because God Himself carries you into the new place. You do not have to fight to maintain what God gives. He sustains what He establishes. Elevation from people requires performance, but elevation from God requires faith. People promote you based on expectation, but God promotes you based on destiny. People elevate you based on what they think you can do, but God elevates you based on what He already placed inside you. There is also a supernatural boldness that accompanies divine elevation. God strengthens your voice, He enlarges your confidence, He increases your authority. You find yourself stepping into rooms you once feared. You speak with clarity you never had before. You carry yourself differently, not with pride, but with humility and certainty that God is moving through you. Elevation is not just about what God does around you, but what He does within you. When He lifts you, He strengthens your identity so that you can carry the weight of the new dimension. The moment God decides to elevate you, the season changes instantly. What resisted you before begins to cooperate with you. What was delayed becomes accelerated. What was hidden becomes revealed. What was impossible becomes inevitable. When God elevates you, He aligns everything: timing, people, resources, opportunities. Heaven does not operate in fragments, it operates in full alignment. When your moment comes, everything comes. God is preparing to elevate you not because of your perfection, but because of your purpose, not because of your strength, but because of His assignment, not because of your worthiness, but because of His promise. When He elevates you, nothing can stop it. not your past, not your weakness, not your fear, not your surroundings, not the opinions of others, not the attacks of the enemy. Nothing is powerful enough to oppose the rising hand of God. When He lifts you, you rise. Whenever God is preparing to launch you into a new dimension, He begins with an invisible but powerful process, the expansion of your inner capacity. Before the elevation happens externally, it happens internally. Before God increases your influence, He increases your endurance. Before He enlarges your territory, He enlarges your heart. Every new dimension demands a new version of you, and God will never place you in a realm your character cannot sustain. He transforms you from within so that when He opens the doors ahead of you, you will walk through them with stability, maturity, and spiritual authority. One of the first signs that God is expanding your capacity is a stirring in your spirit that you cannot explain. You begin to feel that what once was enough for you no longer satisfies you. The environments you used to thrive in feel too small. The conversations you used to enjoy no longer feed you. The routines you followed faithfully now feel restrictive. This restlessness is not frustration. It is growth. It is the signal that God is stretching you beyond who you were, so He can reveal who you are becoming. You are outgrowing your old season, not because something is wrong, but because something new is forming. God expands your capacity through pressure. Pressure is the instrument that God uses to stretch your spiritual muscles. When your faith is stretched, it grows. When your dependence on God is stretched, it deepens. When your patience is stretched, it solidifies. God allows discomfort not to break you, but to build you. You may wonder why the challenges seem to increase right before your breakthrough. It is because God is enlarging the container of your spirit to hold the blessing that is coming. A bigger calling requires a bigger capacity. A greater destiny requires a stronger foundation. The weight of your next dimension cannot rest on the structure of your old self. God also expands your capacity by exposing you to situations that force you to rely on Him more deeply than you ever have. He allows you to face battles that your natural strength cannot win. He puts you in moments where your wisdom feels insufficient. He places you in environments where your usual strategies no longer work. Not to discourage you, but to teach you a higher level of dependence. When God brings you to the end of your own strength, it is because He is introducing you to His. He is expanding your spiritual capacity to receive divine help, divine revelation, divine guidance, and divine strength. Another way God expands your capacity is by enlarging your vision. He begins to show you glimpses of what is possible. Visions, ideas, dreams, spiritual impressions, unexpected desires for something greater. You start seeing yourself beyond your current limitations. You feel drawn toward assignments that once intimidated you. You sense that you were created for more than what your present environment reflects. This is God stretching your imagination, because you cannot step into a destiny you cannot see. Vision is the seed of elevation. God plants that seed before He waters it with opportunities. The vision in your spirit is a preview of the place He is taking you. Sometimes God expands your capacity by allowing certain doors to remain closed longer than you expected. You pray, you fast, you believe, and still the door does not open. But every closed door in a season of preparation is intentional. God is teaching you persistence. He is teaching you to maintain faith without proof. He is teaching you to trust His timing over your desire. When God delays a blessing, it is not because He is withholding it. It is because He is strengthening the part of you that will sustain it. You are not being denied. You are being developed. God also expands your capacity by exposing weaknesses you did not know you had. He reveals areas of pride, impatience, fear, insecurity, anger, or emotional instability. Not to shame you, but to heal you. because elevation exposes whatever is unresolved. If God promotes you without healing you, your wounds become weapons against your destiny. So he brings issues to the surface to purify your heart and strengthen your character. What feels like spiritual conviction is actually spiritual preparation. God cannot take you higher without first making you whole. Another dimension of capacity growth is relational pruning. God removes people who drain you, distract you, or diminish your faith. He separates you from voices that keep you small. He shifts relationships that no longer align with your destiny. This pruning is painful, but it is necessary. The next dimension requires people who encourage your spirit, not weaken it. God is making room for divine connections, covenant partners, and strategic relationships that will propel you forward. When God is expanding your capacity, He also expands your circle, but only after He cleans it. God expands your capacity through spiritual hunger. You begin to crave prayer more deeply. You feel drawn to worship with greater intensity. The Word of God stirs you in ways it never did before. You sense a pull towards solitude, fasting, and consecration. This is God enlarging your spiritual appetite, because your next level requires intimacy with Him at a depth you have not yet known. He increases your hunger so He can increase your revelation. He increases your revelation so He can increase your authority. Every spiritual appetite is preparation for a spiritual assignment. Ultimately, capacity expansion is God's way of preparing you for the weight of glory that is coming. Your next dimension is not light. It requires wisdom, discipline, resilience, and spiritual maturity. It requires a heart that is steady, a mind that is clear, and a spirit that is grounded. God will not elevate you into a position where the pressure will crush you. So He stretches you now, strengthens you now, tests you now, trains you now, refines you now, so that when He launches you, you will not just rise, you will remain. You may not understand everything God is doing in this season, but you can be certain of this. He is expanding you because He is preparing to elevate you. He is enlarging your spirit because He is getting ready to enlarge your destiny. You are being stretched because you are being prepared. You are being prepared because you are being positioned. And you are being positioned because God is about to launch you into a dimension you have never walked in before. Before God launches you into a new dimension, He leads you through a deeper dimension of surrender. Elevation is not simply about being lifted higher. It is about being aligned more perfectly with the will of God. You cannot carry old patterns into a new season. You cannot walk into a divine assignment with casual commitment. The next dimension demands a higher level of obedience, a sharper sensitivity, and a willingness to let God lead you in ways you have never experienced before. What God is preparing for you is too great to be approached with half-hearted devotion. Obedience is the key that unlocks acceleration in the kingdom of God. There are breakthroughs that prayer alone will not activate. There are dimensions that fasting alone will not open. There are opportunities that worship alone will not release. It is obedience, full, immediate, and joyful obedience, that shifts you into the place God has ordained. God does not elevate those who simply hear His instruction. He elevates those who respond to it. When God speaks, He is not giving suggestions. He is giving direction that aligns you with destiny, and every act of obedience pulls you closer to the realm you were created to walk in. Often, God requires obedience in the small things before He entrusts you with bigger responsibilities. He watches how you handle private instructions before He gives you public influence. He observes how you respond to quiet promptings before He releases you into loud platforms. God tests your willingness in hidden places because obedience in secret prepares you for honor in the open. Many people want elevation, but not everyone wants the discipline that precedes it. Yet the next dimension cannot be entered through emotion. It is entered through submission. Surrender is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. It is the act of placing your plans, desires, fears, ambitions, relationships, and timeline into the hands of God. Surrender says, Lord, I trust your way even when I don't understand it. I trust your timing even when it feels slow. I trust your direction even when it's uncomfortable. God cannot launch someone who still insists on steering their own life. The new dimension requires that you let him lead, completely, wholeheartedly, without resistance. You cannot reach divine destiny while holding onto personal control. Sometimes the greatest battles in your spiritual journey are not external, but internal. The battle between your will and God's will, the battle between what you want and what God is calling you to, the battle between comfort and calling. A true elevation requires you to choose God's will even when your flesh wants something different. Every time you surrender your will, you break another chain. Every time you obey God's voice, you rise another level. Your destiny is shaped by the decisions you make in those quiet, defining moments when no one is watching but God. In seasons where God is preparing you for a new dimension, He will ask you to release things you once depended on. He may ask you to walk away from relationships that keep you spiritually stagnant. He may ask you to sacrifice habits that drain your spiritual power. He may ask you to let go of opportunities that look good but are not His will. He may ask you to step into assignments that stretch you beyond your comfort zone. Obedience will often require walking into the unknown, trusting that God has already prepared the way. Your next level will not be found in the familiar. You must step into the unfamiliar to discover it. There are times when God speaks and His instruction challenges your logic. He may ask you to forgive someone who deeply wounded you. He may ask you to sow into a place where you feel you have nothing left to give. He may ask you to stay when you want to run. He may ask you to move when you want to stay. He may ask you to humble yourself when pride wants to rise. He may ask you to wait when impatience wants to act. Obedience is not always convenient, but it is always transformational. Every time you obey, you break open another level of spiritual authority. Obedience and surrender also sharpen your spiritual sensitivity. When you consistently say yes to God, your spirit becomes more attuned to His voice. You begin to discern His whispers in ways you couldn't before. You recognize His leading even in small moments. You sense His direction without confusion. The new dimension requires clarity, precision, and divine guidance, and obedience tunes your heart like an instrument to the frequency of heaven. Those who obey God walk with discernment that others do not understand. Another aspect of obedience is consistency, not just obeying God when it feels inspiring or when the instruction feels exciting, but obeying Him when it feels routine, difficult, or even silent. God observes consistency because the next dimension requires endurance. Elevation is not sustained by moments, it is sustained by discipline. God trains you in consistency so that when He gives you greater responsibility, you carry it with integrity and faithfulness. Sometimes surrender requires letting God redefine your identity. You may have grown attached to who you were in the last season, but God is shaping you into someone new. The next dimension requires a stronger version of you, more confident, more prayerful, more disciplined, more surrendered, more focused. God strips away false identities, past wounds, and limiting beliefs so that you can rise into the identity He originally designed. You cannot carry old insecurities into a new level of calling. When God calls you to deeper obedience, it is because He sees the greatness ahead of you. He knows what your future demands. He knows what blessings await you. He knows the spiritual maturity your assignment requires. He knows the weight of glory that is coming. When God asks for a deeper yes, it is always because He is preparing a greater manifestation. The new dimension is costly, but the reward far outweighs the sacrifice. What God is getting ready to reveal in your life cannot be accessed through partial devotion. It requires full surrender, unwavering obedience, and a heart that says, "Lord, even if I don't understand, I trust you. Even if the path feels narrow, I will follow you. Even if the journey stretches me, I will remain faithful." Your submission becomes the runway from which God launches you into realms you never imagined. When God is preparing to launch you into a new dimension, He never expects you to climb there by your own strength. Human effort alone cannot take you into a God-designed destiny. What He is about to do in your life is far greater than anything your skills, qualifications, resources, or mindset could produce. The next level is not achieved, it is received. And it is received through supernatural assistance. God sends divine help to lift you, guide you, protect you, and empower you in ways you could never accomplish through natural ability. There is a moment in every believer's life where your strength reaches its limit, and that moment is not a failure. It is an invitation. It is heaven saying, "Let me take it from here." When your ability ends, God's ability begins. When your energy drains, His supernatural power steps in. When your understanding collapses, His wisdom becomes your guide. When your resources fall short, His provision takes over. You cannot step into a supernatural dimension with natural strength. You must rely on a God who operates beyond human limitation. Supernatural assistance often begins with supernatural alignment. God starts arranging things in your life that you never asked for, never planned for, and never expected. He aligns the right people at the right time. He positions you in the right places, sometimes without your awareness. He connects you to individuals who carry keys to your next level, mentors, encouragers, intercessors, destiny helpers. These are not coincidences. They are divine appointments. God orchestrates them behind the scenes because He knows precisely who you need to encounter to fulfill the assignment ahead of you. There will also be moments when God sends angelic assistance. You may not see angels physically, but their presence surrounds you. They guard you, fight for you, protect you from unseen dangers, and clear paths that the enemy tried to block. When you survived situations you shouldn't have survived, when you escaped traps the enemy set for you, when you experienced deliverance without explanation, those were not accidents. They were evidence that heaven was involved. God deploys heavenly forces on your behalf because your next dimension carries a heavenly assignment. Supernatural assistance shows itself in unexpected favor. Doors open that you did not knock on. Opportunities appear that you did not chase. Resources come that you did not ask for. People trust you without knowing why. Systems that resisted you suddenly begin to support you. Favor is God's fingerprint on your destiny. It is His way of proving that elevation is not about works. It is about grace. When God favors you, even those who dislike you will be compelled to bless you. Favor turns opposition into opportunity. Favor turns delay into acceleration. Favor turns impossibility into certainty. There will be times when supernatural assistance appears as divine strength. You will walk through seasons that should have broken you, but somehow you remain standing. You will face attacks that should have taken you out, but somehow you rise again. You will experience storms that should have drowned your faith, but somehow you stay afloat. This is not because you are strong. It is because God is holding you. His strength becomes your foundation. His power becomes your endurance. His presence becomes your anchor. When you feel weak, God is not disappointed. He is activated. His strength flows best through surrendered vessels. God also provides supernatural wisdom, wisdom that reveals solutions you could never conceive on your own, wisdom that guides you through complex decisions, wisdom that gives you insight beyond your experience. This wisdom does not come from books alone. It comes from communion with God. The closer you walk with Him, the clearer your spiritual hearing becomes. The next dimension requires decisions that your natural understanding cannot handle. God gives you wisdom so that you can navigate new territory with confidence, clarity, and accuracy. Supernatural assistance often shows up as divine timing. You may wonder why certain breakthroughs seem delayed for so long, only to happen suddenly without warning. That suddenness is not randomness. It is perfect timing. God waits until everything aligns, until the environment is ready, until your heart is prepared, until your character is strengthened, until your capacity has expanded. When divine timing meets divine assistance, elevation becomes unstoppable. You could not force it before, but when God releases it, nothing can restrain it. At times, supernatural assistance manifests as peace that makes no sense in your situation, peace that quiets storms, peace that stabilizes your spirit. This peace is not the absence of battle, it is the presence of God in the battle. When your heart is anchored in divine peace, fear loses its power, anxiety loses its voice, doubt loses its grip. Peace is a weapon God uses to prepare you for higher dimensions. He stabilizes your spirit before He expands your territory. Another form of supernatural assistance is divine endurance. Your next dimension may require persistence, and God empowers you to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. He gives you the stamina to pray when you feel exhausted. He gives you the faith to believe when circumstances look impossible. He gives you the courage to act when fear tries to paralyze you. Endurance is not natural. It is imparted by God. He strengthens your inner man so that nothing can stop your forward movement. God also sends supernatural clarity during transitions. The next dimension often comes with new responsibilities, new environments, and new spiritual assignments. Clarity is essential. God lights your path step by step. He shows you who to trust and who to distance from. He reveals what to embrace and what to release. He uncovers traps before you step into them. He brings insight into situations that would have confused you in past seasons. Clarity is a form of divine protection. When God assists you supernaturally, He removes burdens you were never meant to carry. He carries the weight of the calling while you carry the obedience. He carries the responsibility while you carry the surrender. He carries the warfare while you carry the faith. You were never created to fulfill your destiny by yourself. God never intended for you to depend on your own strength. He intended for you to lean on His. What God is preparing to do in your life next is something only He can accomplish. The place He is taking you is too high for human strength, too wide for human planning, too deep for human wisdom. Your next dimension is sealed with divine assistance. You are not going alone. You are not rising alone. You are not fighting alone. Heaven is backing you. God is empowering you. The supernatural is carrying you. When God is preparing to launch you into a new dimension, He does not look at your qualifications, your background, your limitations, or your history. He looks at your faith. Every struggle you have survived, every tear you have cried, every door that closed, every delay that frustrated you, and every season that seemed unfair was not meant to break you. It was shaping you for what is coming. Heaven never wastes seasons. God has been arranging circumstances, molding your character, sharpening your spiritual sensitivity, and preparing your inner life so that when the moment arrives, you will be able to step into your new dimension with authority, clarity, and confidence. This new dimension is not simply a better version of your old life. It is a realm where you operate with a higher level of faith, a deeper awareness of God's presence, and a stronger spiritual identity. It is a place where you begin to see the supernatural intervention of God as a normal part of your journey. You begin to witness breakthroughs that human effort cannot produce. You begin to experience favor that cannot be explained. You begin to walk through doors that you did not knock on. You begin to receive opportunities that you never applied for. You begin to live under a divine acceleration that cannot be slowed down by opposition or fear. Every voice of doubt that tried to silence you, every battle that tried to wear you out, and every challenge that made you question whether God was still with you, was actually proof that you were close to transition. The enemy fights you the hardest right before God lifts you the highest. Pressure intensifies before promotion. Confusion often increases before clarity arrives. But even when you didn't feel it, God was working behind the scenes. Even when you couldn't see anything changing, God was aligning everything perfectly. Even when you wondered if you were forgotten, God was preparing a moment where your name would be remembered. Now the season is shifting. The atmosphere around your life is changing. What felt stagnant is about to begin moving. What felt delayed is about to be delivered. What felt hidden is about to be revealed. God is lifting you out of the place of limitation and opening a pathway that leads into your new dimension. You are stepping into a chapter where the grace on your life increases, where your spiritual authority expands, where your influence multiplies, and where your purpose becomes clearer than ever before. This is not the time to shrink back. This is the time to rise. This is the time to believe boldly. This is the time to pray with greater fire, to worship with deeper surrender, and to stand with unshakable faith. Because the God who called you is the God who equips you. The God who promised you is the God who will fulfill every word. And the God who has carried you through every valley is the same God who will now lift you to a mountain top you never imagined. Get ready. What is ahead of you is greater than what is behind you. The shift has already begun. Heaven has already released the command. The divine launch has already been scheduled. You are being positioned, elevated, and accelerated for a dimension that will redefine your life, your impact, and your destiny.